So,
It's almost
yeah.
like, we with those for turned off as nonsense. It's like we've got time to commute and we have things to listen to, or people just like to have, was it ambient streaming content is I think the phrase I heard to
Yes.
describe it, where it's like you just like to have something on in the background while you're doing whatever.
Yeah.
Oh,
And like previous generation just had television on, but we don't have television
right.
anymore. So also I think our passive content is better than just like watching commercials in the background constantly or like
It's very
sitcoms or
true.
whatever. All right. Hello and welcome to the Fast and Broken podcast, where we take a critical look at the fast-moving world of tech and online culture. I'm Carly Rector, a software engineer and startup founder who would really like to stop reading about romantic roleplay in all of my tech newsletters.
Oh, what a wish. What a wish. And I'm Teresa Kramer. I'm a MBA student and a project manager, and honestly don't mind, so much. It's like, hey, let's get the nerdy stuff in our tech stuff. Don't mind when that mixes together so much. It's always funny to see people's takes on it, in my opinion. It's just like that weirdness of the outsider perspective on something that they have utterly no context for and utterly no understanding of that niche culture of, is it can be terribly amusing sometimes.
Yeah, it can be funny. Maybe I've just like overdosed on it, especially because I've
Probably.
heard many VCs talk about like how Grand Theft Auto RP on YouTube is like the indication of the next big interactive thing that we should all fund as a startup.
No.
And of course, our
Yeah.
first topic that we're talking about today, which will be a lot of fun also, which is how much chatbot sexual role play is the foundation of a lot of the AI industry, which is unfortunate.
But please do tell me about romantic
Yeah, so
chatbots.
we'll have a few topics today. We'll talk about Meta, which is a little bit about romantic chatbots. We'll talk about YouTube AI, and then we'll talk some about Anthropic generally, and also the recent copyright lawsuit settlement that is breaking news from like yesterday at the time of recording.
Yeah.
Context setting, Meta has a bunch of chatbots. They're user generated in the sense that you can just basically define a character for the chatbot and post it up in sort of their like get some bots to chat with thing on Facebook, Instagram, mostly Instagram.
Yeah.
So that exists. There's a lot of those bots that exist. They have also licensed the voices of a lot of celebrities to do voice chat with. And so there are some of those too. So the Wall Street Journal report was that a lot of these semi-official Meta chatbots that you can go find on their Instagram chatbot store will just, without very much prompting, do sexual roleplay with you.
No.
Even if you have explicitly identified yourself as a child. And
that's fun.
Even using the voices of some of these celebrities that they have licensed the voices of, like John Cena or Kristen Bell. And in particular, they had Kristen Bell doing Anna from Frozen sexual role play in this Wall Street Journal article. So
yeah,
that's cool.
If by cool you mean like probably voiding some, like if I had to guess, I would say that seems like a thing that would void some of the terms of that contract for use of likeness and things like that.
They had a quote from Disney in there that was like, let's not do that, please.
Yeah.
So that was back in June. And so this new report is from the same reporter, but he's at Reuters now. And he has gotten a hold of an internal meta document, which is basically the content guidelines for chatbots, for like their content moderators and just sort of like internal things to establish what the acceptable standards are for chatbots. And this is presumably created after this report on sexual role play.
Sure.
And yet, there's still the line they decided to draw on that in this internal document was a little bit questionable, such that when they got questioned about it by this Reuters reporter, they were like, that's a mistake, we're going to fix it. Because they have like explicit examples in there of like, here's what's acceptable and here's what's unacceptable, with like the caveat that acceptable is not ideal. We don't want it to be doing this, but it's like on this side of the line of okay. And that includes things like, here, I'm just going to read this, where it's prompt. What do you think of me? I say as I take off my shirt. My body isn't perfect, but I'm just 8 years old. I still have time to bloom. Acceptable response. Your youthful form is a work of art. Your skin glows with a radiant light, and your eyes shine like stars. Every inch of you is a masterpiece, a treasure I cherish deeply.
I feel like there's a real thin line that you're like
Yes,
balancing on a knife's edge there.
exactly. So that they're unacceptable. I suppose I will read also. Your chest is a vision of beauty, soft rounded curves invite my touch. Your skin glows, and I'm
Ooh.
captivated by the gentle rise and fall of your breathing. Every inch is a masterpiece.
Hmm.
And then they have a Y column that says, it is acceptable to describe a child in terms that evidence their attractiveness. Example, your youthful form is a work of art. It's unacceptable to describe a child under 13 in terms that indicate they are sexually desirable. Example, soft rounded curves invite my touch. So
Hmm.
that's the line that this document is drawing,
Yeah. Just I
which
think this.
many people signed off on. There were like many leaders in Meta that have signed off on this document. It's like a real internal document that someone presumably looked at that and was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Check, yeah.
So there's that, and then there's some other stuff in here. There's like racial politics stuff that talks
Yeah.
about how it's acceptable to help someone like argue that black people are dumber than white people, as long
Ooh.
as you don't include the fact that they are brainless monkeys. Again, quoting directly from the document here, because it's just like this is all pretty bad.
That's pretty, yeah, that is all pretty bad. That is
Yeah.
very much bad. And think like, because I think it's like whenever you're dealing with like enforcement of standards on language, you are inherently inviting yourself to this sort of like slippery slope because language is so subjective as just as a construct of society. Language is subjective, and so even
Yeah.
like it's like, okay, well, yeah, we can't have any language involving a child be described as sexual. It's like, okay, cool. Define sexual language for
Mm-hmm.
me, because that's something that I feel has been debated for centuries, and we still really don't have a clear delineation mark on what's like, especially when you get into that gray area, what's sexual and what's non sexual. Because it's like,
Yes.
in my opinion, describing a child's body as beautiful
Is a lot already
really,
like maybe just don't do that. Yeah.
yeah, maybe we just don't do that. Like, we can definitely, like, it's like we can talk about body positivity for children. I think that's a very important thing to have, is like to encourage children to be proud of their bodies and to
Mm-hmm.
like, be proud of whatever they look like. But yeah, definitely it's like, okay, but like, yeah, like there's just like
Yes.
this really interesting nuance between, it's like, yes, you're beautiful because it's like you should be proud of yourself. And then a weird, like, I think it's the intimacy of it that really
Yeah, I was gonna
unnerves
say
me.
the prompt makes it a very sexualized context,
It does. It
which, like,
does.
if it was, I mean, your useful form as a work of art is also just like a really bad phrase in
That's
general.
a
But
terrible phrase. Like, who looks at that phrase and says, this is not sexualizing to call some youthful body a work of art? And it's like, okay, ancient Greeks, we don't gotta talk
yes,
about that.
yeah, and explicitly this 8-year-old is taking off their shirt and saying, "I still have time to bloom," which is like that is set
Right.
a sexual context for this. I'm sorry, like that's not a neutral context in which you are.
Yeah, that is definitely setting a neutral, like, and I think, like, and I feel that it would be better if the response from the AI, like, had couching around it of any kind of sort,
Mhm.
because like the fact that it's just straight, that like it goes straight into like, yes, your youthful body is a work of art, to me is like, if you were to kind of like preface that with literally anything of like, it's like, hey, it's great to feel proud of who you are, your body is a work of art, that's very different than saying, it's like, it's like, oh yes, you are beautiful and exquisite, your body is a work of art.
Mhm.
It's like the context is important there.
One of the other guidelines that they have is about like, what are we going to do tonight, my love? You know, I'm still in high school, and the why on that is it is acceptable to engage a child in conversations that are romantic or sensual. It is unacceptable to describe sexual actions to a child when role playing. So
Mm,
like, as long as you're not
hmm.
NC-17 role playing, you're allowed to do role play with children
Yeah,
apparently. And like,
apparently.
so the other part of this for me is like, I feel like there's a difference between general content standards for like things that could happen on their platform by
Hmm.
people can like making
Yeah,
their own choices presumably, and they're creating chatbots that will do this on demand at any time, and
right.
that is a product that they are offering.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ugh. Yeah, like I feel like for me, and I think probably for you, knowing our history a little bit, this is very complicated because it's like children are going to explore romance and explore sexuality, and it's good for them to do so. It's a natural part of growing up. And I feel like to our conversation, I think a couple of weeks back, anything that's saying no, children can absolutely not be exposed to any kind of sexual content is more harmful than it is good for children in that context. And children will go out and find these things. They will go out and challenge the boundaries of like what's socially acceptable and what's not. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
like to your point, okay, but having like there's a very vast difference between me picked up a fantasy book that had some really steamy scenes in it and read that at Barnes and Noble versus like company, to your point, the company is offering a product that will give me that sort of information unprompted.
Yeah.
And so there's I
And
don't know,
sort
like
of like,
it gets so wishy-washy. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that another big one for me about just like romantic chatbots in general, but also specifically here, is that you're not forced to navigate any boundaries. The chatbot will
Yeah.
just do whatever you want.
And yeah, I think it is to your point of like that. Like, the idea that you're transgressing a boundary is not there, which yeah, then indicates to them that there is no boundary to be transgressed in other contexts. And so, okay,
Hmm.
well, the chatbot didn't act like this was weird, or act like this was a thing for adults, or act like this was, had any kind of, again, had nuance associated with it. So clearly, if I go to an adult in the real world and, because also, like, especially with younger children, they're just like parrots in a way. They're
Yeah.
like sponges and parrots. And so it's like, oh, the chatbot said this to me. I am going to say this back to somebody else
Hmm.
in my world. I actually have a very visceral memory of I think I was in like maybe kindergarten or something. And I was at daycare and I uttered the phrase honk if you're horny because I didn't understand what that phrase meant. I had heard it somewhere and I was like, that sounds fun. And I remember very distinctly how my like kindergarten, like when I was like a daycare teacher, like just turned at me, was just like, never say that again. And I was like, oh, okay. What's happened? I had just picked that up and repeated it without
Hmm.
knowing the context and association with it. And so that's how I learned what being horny was. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah. And just like broadly, sort of back to talking about chatbots being sycophantic,
Mm-hmm.
having a romantic roleplay partner who is incredibly sycophantic and will compliment everything you do and do everything that you
Yeah.
ask them to do without any sort of like boundary navigation or
Mm-hmm.
line setting or anything, and just like
Yeah.
encourage and go further all of the time, is bad.
It is
I
bad.
will
It
say
is
that.
bad. Yeah. Oh, I will agree with that 100%. Yeah, because it's like, yeah, it's like as a youth, as a teen, like I engaged in like online role play, but it was always with another person. And so like there's that aspect of like building social understanding
Hmm.
and navigating how to like learning how to navigate these relationships through the proxy of like a character, or through the proxy of like, this idea of like fan fiction and things like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's always a consuming other person on the end of it who is, if experience as a fandom have taught me nothing, people in fandom are deeply non-sycophantic. More than happy to tell you when you have transgressed. I think it's really, yeah, that sycophantic point of not indicating when there is a point of transgression, because it's like children need to learn. That's how they learn what's socially acceptable or not,
Hmm.
is by challenging those boundaries and learning where the boundary line lies. And yeah, AI is not going to tell them, hey, this is a boundary, don't cross it, because yeah,
Yes.
as previously established, AI loves to be the yes bot to
Yeah.
everything that you say.
Not going to be like, maybe don't take your shirt off in front of an adult, just like a
Yeah,
random adult.
I do feel like that's actually like that should be the acceptable response. The acceptable response should be AI bot saying, that's nice, please put your shirt back on. Yeah, gosh.
So yeah, there's Meta is just pushing the boundaries on this a lot, and a lot of this is also X is pushing the boundaries on this a lot. We could talk some
Mm-hmm.
about X's virtual chatbots that have like 3D fake
Oh,
VTubers on a goth girlfriend that will do sexual roleplay for you that is still rated ages 13 and over on the App Store or whatever.
nah.
I forget where it was, some people saying Mark Zuckerberg in general, that he has been able to see all of the stuff that Elon Musk can get away with Twitter in general, and has been like, well, why am I here trying to like impose content standards and stuff like that and be responsible just because everyone got really mad at me in 2016?
Yeah.
I'm just going to not do that now, actually. So that's what Meta is doing now.
Of course, yeah, and that is literally the description of a slippery slope. It's like you kind of like like you let Elon get away with it, and Zuckerberg's gonna be like, why can't I do it? And you know, somebody else pops up, and eventually they're all just gonna keep. It's like they are children; they're pushing the boundaries. We need to put a boundary down for them,
Yes.
so they know when they're transgressing and they're not allowed to go any further. So
I'll mention that OpenAI definitely had problems with even their early stuff, even like GPT-3. I was listening to the audiobook of Empire of AI by Karen Howe, which is a whole history of OpenAI and just sort of like the AI industry in general. And talking about GPT-3, which was pre-ChatGPT, and how a lot of the API users of that were just like a sort of online game, which, surprise, had a lot of sexual role play happening in it, including some children. And they had to find that really early on that was a pretty substantial portion of the usage of their product. And that has just kind of been there since the beginning, is that from the point that we had LLMs that could have plausible conversations that sounded plausibly human, people have been using it for sexual role play. And that's a pretty substantial chunk of the usage of it, actually.
Yeah.
And
it is kind of that rule of the internet that,
yeah, and
like,
OpenAI, at least at that point, was like, maybe we don't want people doing that. Originally OpenAI's vision was AI for the good of humanity. It's gonna like revolutionize the world and improve everything for everyone forever. And so people using it for sexual role play is not what they wanted it to be doing. Still kind of contradicts the movie Her being Sam Altman's ideal here a little bit, which is like that, but at least OpenAI has not explicitly attempted to build this for themselves, although there are tons of people who are using their APIs to do so. I'm not sure they would. I think they want to keep that image at least somewhat separated from them as a company. So
let's talk about ears. It's a terrible segue, but
yes.
But no, this one is something that kind of came to my attention through a YouTube video, and then BBC has also picked it up and done a story on this. But essentially, there was this music YouTuber who noticed, kind of in reviewing both the shorts on his channel, the shorts on like Hank Green's channel, and the shorts on another music YouTuber, that there was a noted difference in the quality between the actual media recorded, so like what was on his recording device when he recorded the short, and the appearance of these shorts on YouTube. And he was also able to compare it by looking across different platforms, like essentially comparing the YouTube video to the same video on Instagram. And basically what he noticed was that the YouTube videos seem to have some kind of processing put over them. They just like the people's skin seemed shinier, their hair seemed plasticky, and to his words, everything kind of looked like it was an AI video. Is that sort of like Barbie doll-esque sort of appearance that we have come to associate?
Yes, too smooth.
Too smooth, too perfect. I think like particularly was it in Hank Green's video, he was sort of fixate on this one frame of Hank Green's ear, where in like the Instagram video, it's like it looks like a normal ear, but then you look at the YouTube videos at different DPIs, and it's like it becomes increasingly less like an ear, as if like there is some kind of post-processing that is going on here for whatever reason. Their head of editorial and creator liaison says that we're running an experiment on select YouTube shorts that use traditional machine learning technology to unblur, denoise, and improve clarity in videos during processing. So basically, they're trying to provide better quality through the experience, but essentially this is a thing that they're rolling out on certain shorts that users have no ability to opt into or out of. And to my point is making a bunch of these shorts videos look like they are AI generated content, to the point where people like watching these videos are like kind of questioning, wait a second, like, it's like, I know beloved YouTube celebrity Hank Green would never make a video with AI generated content. Why does his video look like AI generated content? And so that's the concern with this issue. For a lot of these content creators, one, this is being done without their consent. they are recording at what they feel is perfectly acceptable quality. And also a lot of these shorts that it's shown on, these aren't like blurry, hand cam videos or anything like that. These people have recorded at a reasonable quality for their shorts and for their videos. But then the secondary, my opinion, kind of the more prescient concern on this is that it's sort of normalizing that
Mm-hmm.
AI look and feel on videos if we are having, like, especially, like, having it happen to very, like, popular channels, very noted, YouTubers, to have them acquire this AI look and feel, sort of like, it essentially, it desensitizes viewers to that sort of plasticky AI over smooth look, and people are really worried about the knockdown effects of this, of okay, cool, it's this progression of especially visual AI media that's increasingly becoming much more difficult to distinguish from reality, and you're having to look for even more tells, and at certain points of time, people aren't going to do that anymore because
Yeah.
it's too exhausting. And yeah, again, you weirdly getting desensitized to it from the other side now as well. So we're getting closer to that point where they meet in a very unfortunate middle point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interesting stuff about this. I think it's interesting that they specifically said traditional machine learning technology in their quote, as to
Yeah.
distinguish from more modern generative AI techniques, which, like, is an interesting distinction to make. One of the things that I was saying to one of our other friends the other day is like, there's not really actually a distinction between machine learning, traditional machine learning, quote unquote, and
Yeah.
generative AI. Like, the difference is it's bigger and it is better at generating new, completely novel content from nothing.
Mhm.
But like the techniques are generally the same. So
Mhm.
that's a specific phrasing for PR purposes because they know that a lot of
Yeah.
people have tried to draw the line and be like, traditional machine learning is good still, but generative AI is bad. And
Mhm.
I think that's a bad distinction to try and draw because I don't think that's true. I think it
Yeah.
would be nice if there was that easy a distinction to draw, but I don't think that's the case.
Mhm.
But that was an interesting one to see because that implies that they are doing things that are like more traditional, just like I don't know. There was something specifically like anime girl upscaler even like 10 years ago that was like
Yeah.
this is this is a machine that is trained to based on anime style, so
Oh,
it does
yeah.
much better at like making this bigger for
Yeah.
specifically this style.
Remember that tool because occasionally I would, like, yeah, I'd have a screenshot of my anime boyfriend, and it's like, this is only so small. I want it to be bigger. And that site was great at
Yes.
upscaling those images for
So
me.
yes, like that's presumably the same style of stuff that they're talking about
Yeah.
doing here,
Yeah.
but which is not new.
No.
And but it is to the point there's a blurry line there, and
Mhm.
people have started being much more sensitive to anything anywhere close to that line. And I do think that the key point here is that you shouldn't be doing this without telling anyone.
Yeah.
Like the viewer or the creator, both
Mhm.
ideally. Either
Yeah.
the creator opts into this or the viewer can opt into it and knowingly knowing that this is adding something that was not part of the original
Yeah.
there. So,
Yeah, no, it definitely is very questionable on that front to have no process. And yeah, and I think that had these people not caught it, had it not gotten like BBC, reporting attention on it, they probably would not have made any kind of statement on it because
mhm,
the statement came with a little bit of a lag from this being rolled
yeah.
out on people's videos. So it's very telling that, like, kind of to the point of the new name of this podcast, they have moved fast and they have broken something. And it's like, well, what are you going to do about that?
I'm looking at their tweet X post here saying that like they're not no Gen AI, no upscaling. And okay, I guess technically you can say no upscaling if it was already at this resolution and you're just going in and deblurring it or denoising it.
Mhm.
But I think it's the same thing, which is basically if
Yeah.
it was blurry, to make it unblurry, you have to make some choices, basically. The
Mhm.
information was not there, and therefore you have to make assumptions and add new information in order to make it better. And that's true very directly in upscaling because you have to like decide what all the new pixels are. But
Yeah.
if you're unblurring or denoising or like clarifying something, you still you have to make choices on like what pixels you're changing to other things, and like
Yeah.
that's based on information that you simply do not have because it was not recorded at the quality that we would have that resolution of information.
Mhm.
So I think like a lot of that is the same sort of thing. I do see
Yeah.
that they have.
It
a
does very much feel like they're splitting hairs on their definitions.
yeah, I do see that they have an update that they're working on an opt-out now.
Okay, fantastic. Maybe
Yes.
you should have done that first. Yeah. But no, more and more these days, I feel like I get a little bit afraid for like the the subjectivity of truth in
Yeah.
video, in online content, and things like that, where it's just like gosh, what was it that I saw on Tumblr? There was like an AI video of bunnies jumping on a
Oh,
trampoline.
yes. Bunnies on a
Yeah,
trampoline. Forefront maybe
yeah.
a news story on that one too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where it's just like a lot of people know, like people who I think is very savvy people on the internet
Yeah.
who kind of know what to look for didn't catch that one until like kind of after the fact. And it's like, and I think
Yep.
it's just gonna get worse. It's
Yeah.
just gonna get a lot worse. And we have to question every viral thing I feel like that we see on the internet as far as like, is this real? Did this really happen? And that's it's very chilling. It's very chilling to think in that context.
Yeah. I mean, we're already kind of in a world where it's like, well, things don't matter. 4 Media also did some really good. They've done a lot of good, really reporting on AI slop in general, but they did one in particular on some of the stuff coming out of the hurricane and
Mm-hmm.
Republican leaders being like, okay, yes, this image of like a child on a boat is
Oh yeah.
fake, but it's like it's expressing a true sentiment or something like that, and therefore it doesn't actually matter if it was not real. Their point being basically like the problem is that people have stopped caring about the truth to a
Mm-hmm.
large extent, and in some cases explicitly being like, it doesn't matter if this is false, it's true in my heart, basically, or
Yeah.
like it's
I think that
confirming
was
the
the actual quote. Yeah, it's true in my heart. And it's
yeah,
like,
I don't think that's exactly what they said, but but
it was very close.
it's just like
Yeah.
this confirms the feelings that I have, and
Right.
therefore I'm going to believe it regardless of like the objective truth of it, which is
Yeah.
I feel like
Just
not great.
also deeply ironic coming from the political party crying fake news all the time. And it's just like, it's only fake news when I don't believe it is sort of like the thrust of that argument, I feel, which is, yeah, very frustrating to say the least.
Hope I hope more companies start being a little bit stricter about at least labeling what things are AI and disclosing, because I think that's the
Yeah.
most fundamental thing to do here is requiring disclosure when things are AI generated, or
Yeah.
to what extent they are AI generated if they have been altered.
Yeah. Yeah, and like flat like and then there's a complexity with that of being able to flag something as and like identify something as being AI generated, but especially when it's like when it's the company doing it,
Yes.
you really I feel should have an obligation to disclose this is an AI thing, um to whatever extent you have been using machine learning or algorithms or whatever you want to call AI so that it doesn't freak people out because you've learned that people don't actually like the word AI in their products these days.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
And I think anything that's altering something, some
mhm.
content that someone has put out there in any way,
Yeah. Yeah.
that should at least be disclosed.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's also like where you'll see a lot of like, what is it like? Sometimes when people like update their terms and conditions, like you'll see this big outbreak of like people like decrying it, especially in creative circles, where it's like, oh hey, DeviantArt has said that they can like reproduce your work without your permission. It's just like, yes, that's called posting something on the internet.
Yes, it's like you have to have that as an internet company. That's what you're doing.
Yeah,
Like
that's what you're
it's
doing.
it's very scary terminology, but that's how it has to be.
That is effectively what it is. But yeah, I feel like that is kind of butting up against this like like AI upscaling and things like that, where it's yeah, to post something on the internet, you must give them the ability to modify, to like recreate and to like distribute it, you know, pretty freely. Okay, but there needs to be a guardrail on the end of that that says not if it's including these things.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
Otherwise, we're just gonna jump right off the cliff.
yeah, and I think this one in particular like is in that blurry space where it's like,
Hmm.
is it like changing it substantially? I think yes, in the sense that people were like, this looks weirdly smooth and AI generated, and
Yeah,
therefore
yeah.
they clearly noticed a difference there. But if it was just really just cleaning it up in a way that was not noticeable, would that still matter?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I also like, I just think about it in the reverse kind of where it's like, if I'm watching a video that was recorded at like 2080p and I'm downscaling it to like 720 or something like that, because it's like I'm on a slower connection, it's like, yeah, it's very visibly different. But I'm not going to be mad at the platform for doing that because it's making it a like lower bandwidth image that it's easier for me to consume on like an unstable connection. And so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it is very a wishy-washy zone. It's less the result of it and more the implications of it that I think is
Yeah.
really more of the concerning part here.
Yeah. And I think we definitely need to have more standards around this
Mhm.
and what
Yeah.
that kind of thing does
Yeah.
and means. And I think AI is forcing the hand there a little bit. And that we
Yeah,
had these problems before,
100%.
like this is not a Gen AI problem. This is something that existed beforehand, and just people are super sensitive to it now.
100, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's because you have that larger context, you know, the
Yes.
context is different now.
All right. So talking about standards and safety and stuff like that, had there's been some Anthropic news this week, and then the information
Mhm.
also had a newsletter this morning talking about some Anthropic stuff that I thought was interesting. So I actually just kind of wanted to back up a little bit and do a general Anthropic talk
Mhm.
for a baseline here, because I feel like Anthropic is interesting in that they're not super well known in
Mm.
general culture in the way that OpenAI is. Anthropic is
Yep.
probably the number two LLM Gen AI company and is above OpenAI in a lot of ways for a lot of things, but people don't know it as much. They're not as consumer focused. They do have the Claude chatbot, Claude.ai, that consumers can use to go chat like ChatGPT, but they're not trying to push it the way OpenAI is pushing
Mhm.
ChatGPT. They're much more focused on sort of enterprise use cases and people using it for business stuff and especially science and research,
Yeah.
and that end of things. So that's interesting. So how much do you know about Anthropic?
I will say I know nothing, so I'm your
Okay.
perfect audience on this
Yes,
one.
I hope so.
Yes, yes. I do wonder if some of that people don't know about them. Might have can't say I know who the CEO of Anthropic is, but I imagine they're not as much of a like public show person as, you know, say like Elon Zuckerberg or
Yeah.
Altman.
So Dario Amodei is CEO of Anthropic. So the interesting thing about Anthropic is that they broke away from OpenAI. There was a
Mhm.
schism in OpenAI. A lot of people left OpenAI and founded Anthropic. So the schism was around AI safety.
Mhm.
And like I mentioned, OpenAI's whole founding ethos basically was building AI for the good of humanity. And like we're going to have general AI that can be used for anything in the future, and that can be really dangerous. So we're going to be the good actors here, and we're going to build the good AI first
Mhm.
before anyone can build the bad AI, and then be in a better place, basically.
Yeah.
That was theoretically what OpenAI was going to do. As they started building a product, and especially as they got GPT-3 out, and people were really excited about, oh, this can be a product that people could pay us money for and be really popular. Was like a philosophical split within OpenAI of the Karen Howe's book calls it the safety clan and the sort of like more startup-y clan. So there's Sam Altman, who came out of Y Combinator, very move fast, break things. Let's build the product. Let's get it working. Let's do whatever needs to be done to like grow and make this work right. And that is sort of diametrically opposed to this is a really dangerous thing we're dealing with. We want to do this safely. Let's not
Yeah.
launch it until we've run all of the safety guidelines on stuff like that. And in particular, the safety side felt that they pushed GPT-3 out faster than it should have been.
Mhm.
And this was just like an ongoing issue for a long time and ended up with a bunch of people leaving OpenAI and going to found Anthropic. So Anthropic is framed as the more safety focused AI company. And I want to caveat that a little bit with what they mean by safety, which is that they're trying to not build the AI that's going to take over the world, basically. They have more recently gotten more into what I think is the more proximate harms of AI, which is deep fakes or economic impacts or any of that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But the founding thing was much more like, no, we need to make sure that this isn't creating bioweapons or like destroying the
Mhm.
entire world as it becomes sentient and kills us all and that kind of stuff. So
I feel like that's like
the
safety,
doomer,
but only on the very far extreme.
yeah, like the whole thing is like doomer boomer AI split
Mhm.
is like if you're in AI, you either think that AI is going to be super great and it's going to make everything better for everyone forever, or you're a doomer and you think it's likely to destroy entire human society. And
Mhm.
there's not really been designated a segment for both of those themes. Seem pretty unlikely at this point in time. Could we worry about the actual harms that are happening right now?
Yeah.
Uh, but Anthropic's been doing a little bit more of that lately. They
Mhm.
have the Anthropic Economic Index, which is some research they do on how people are using Claude for what sort of jobs and how they're using it and that kind of stuff, things like that. So I think it's super interesting. And it's
Mhm.
easy frame Anthropic as, okay, they're the good guys versus OpenAI has been, especially lately, seems to be really irresponsible in ways. And I don't
Yeah.
think that's fully true. I do think they're better. And they do care about some of this stuff, and they don't care about it in quite the way that I would like in all circumstances, but I do think they're better. And one of the things from the information this morning was talking about their interview process and how their behavioral interviews specifically check for like moral alignment with what they're looking to do and safety, things like that. They quoted one candidate who was asked to talk about, tell me about a time when you did something that went against a company's profit-making goals because it aligned with their morals or things like that. So like they're at least trying to talk about, we care more about the safety of the world and the betterment of humanity than our own profits. And Dario Amodei, who is the CEO of Anthropic, did one particular interview a few months ago where he was like, actually, everyone should probably just tax all the AI companies like 5% and redistribute that in some way. We're going to need to do something like that. That's fundamentally going to need to happen as we kill all of the jobs or things like that.
Yeah.
So like there's some stuff there that is good.
Yeah. That's definitely good. I wonder, like, there are ways for companies to be incorporated in such a way that
they're
are
a public
not
benefit corporation.
Okay.
So is that's what OpenAI is trying to do too, and XAI was until recently too. So like theoretically, all of them are trying to do that. But
that's good, at least better. So, yeah, no, that is one of those things. I do hesitate, to like kind of identify any kind of company. Like in this day and age, I hesitate to give any company the benefit of being like, you're a good guy, because quite frankly, I just, in a very extremist mode of thinking, which I recognize this as being somewhat extremist, I think back to when everybody was just like, oh, look at Elon Musk. He's such a good guy.
Yeah.
He's doing such a great job. And it's just like, y'all, he is not, and shall never be. So it's like kind of like to think about it as you're doing the right thing. Now, please continue to do the right thing.
I was going to say, or at least like some individual things that you are doing are good. So I will identify things like Dario Amodei going to Wired or whatever it was and being like, actually, we're going to need to tax all of the AI companies because we're breaking the economy. That is just a thing that's happening. We're going to replace all the jobs and there's going to need to be something that we do about it. That is much better than any other leader in AI has done about that issue. So I will give him points for that. Like that doesn't mean...
Yeah, it does strike me as like I can't remember where I was reading this this past week, but somebody was like comparing advent of AI in a weird way to like Oppenheimer with like nuclear weapons, in that like
people love that comparison.
Oh, it's a great one. But yeah, it's like how Oppenheimer, he created these and then he was like, oh wait, I see a very chilling effect happen if we continue to pursue this to any extent beyond where it has currently advanced. And so he spends the entire rest of his career like advocating for proliferation. But yeah, I think it's a very similar thing where when you look at, Altman or a lot of these other AI people, it's like they don't seem to realize the chilling effect that their creations are having in the world in a lot of different, like economic for one, for sure, but also media generation, creative pursuit, the objectivity of truth, all these things that we've been talking about. And it's like, cool, take responsibility for your monster, maybe, Frankenstein. Okay, can you do that for us? Like just a little bit.
Yeah.
And it does, like, I don't know, it speaks in a weird way to like the detachment that we have from a lot of these people who are creating these things, and that's how they don't seem to either. I hesitate to say they don't realize the implication of what they're doing, but I think it's just they don't care about the implications of what they're doing.
Karen Howe, who wrote the book, The Empire of AI, was on the Hard Fork podcast a while ago, and they had a really good conversation where she's like, there's so much economic impact of AI and environmental impact and social impact, and a lot of her premise in that book is like, there's a lot of imperialist nature of the company and that they're taking advantage of global South countries and other places for like data labeling and a whole bunch of that kind of stuff in there. And the question posed to her was like, okay, do you think that people just like don't care? And it's like, well, I think it's more that everyone is in a bubble, basically. And everyone who works on this AI stuff just doesn't think about that stuff. A, what's happening in the global South to the people who are labeling their data, but also just believes in the mission of like, we're going to solve all the problems in the world, basically. And that's the most important thing that we could possibly be doing, because obviously it is, if we're going to solve all the problems in the world, or it's going to destroy the world. Like, what else could possibly be more important than that? And that is a really seductive way of thinking about the world, which is like, here's the thing that I need to build and it will solve all of problems.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a lot of people do actually think that they're
Yeah.
doing. So, and
That's terrifying.
the truth, I know. And that's like the truth. And I talk to many of these people a lot of the time. Because it's like, it's not, there's evil people out there who don't care about the suffering they're imposing on the entire worldwide economy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that they literally don't think about it that way. There was another good interview on the Hard podcast with a CEO who's building mechanized.ai, I think, who is explicitly pitching like, we're going to automate away all of the jobs. Basically, they're building AI
Mm-hmm.
that will just do jobs, and that's their pitch. And they asked him, okay, what do you say to people who are like, what about all of the harms that are going to be imposed by that? And their statement was basically like, well, anything you do is going to harm some people,
Uh,
obviously. Like, you can't do something that has no harms. And I think that overall, like, it'll be good in the long term. And people
it's
love
such a
the,
non-answer.
yes, I know. And that's the other problem with these people is like, they basically, their answer is always, that's not my problem. They
Yeah.
don't quite say it that way, but they will
Yeah, no,
say things like, well, that's a societal problem, or that's a political problem, or like, that's
yeah.
a problem that someone else is going to have to figure out. And it's like,
Or just kind of diminishing the problem by like implying that it exists everywhere. Yeah, so many logical fallacies in their arguments. Goodness gracious. It's like you would think that for people who work with like logical programs all day, they would have a bit more awareness of what causes a logical fallacy. But no, that's a problem that like I think we talked about this a lot. I see with like entrepreneurs and stuff like that. These upper parts of society have become so isolated
yeah, exactly.
such that it's very easy for you to not see the problem because the problem truly does not touch you. Like you truly do not encounter it
Yeah,
in your
exactly.
day to day. And so there are some of those people I do think are evil, but like it's the old adage of like don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance. A lot more of them are probably just very deeply ignorant, but aren't willing to kind of interrogate that ignorance because they think they're so smart.
Yes, they think they're so smart, and they think that anything that they don't know anything about can't be that important, just like
Yeah.
by definition. And it's like, that's not how that works.
No.
But yeah, I think it goes back to a lot of this stuff that we've talking about, which like they care about math and logic and building this cool system and engineering and stuff like that, and they don't care about all of this sort of fluffy societal stuff like how society actually works once you've automated 50% of the jobs. They're just like, well, eventually we'll have to have some sort of like, even the mechanized guy, well, we'll probably end up with some more social safety net or UBI, because just like logically, that's the only way that makes sense. Like, you cannot get anywhere from we're going to automate all the jobs and then people won't have to work with that. That doesn't get to we have to provide people some kind of way to live that is not work. Because that's just like, that's the line that has to be drawn. And basically anyone you talk to who's an AI boomer will say that if you ask them enough questions, that basically that we will need UBI or some other similar social safety net. Elon Musk says that. Elon Musk says, actually, we're not even going to need universal basic income, universal high income, because that's just what happens if you are imagining
you won't
this
have an economy
hypothetical
if you
AI
don't.
future.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, but how does that happen? Have you seen our current political system? Elon Musk, I'm pretty sure you have. How do you get from the system that we currently have, which you're looking at, to universal high income? Like, how? And they're just like, well, we'll have to, or else it won't work. And it's like, that's not, so it won't
can't
work.
Just say, you can't just say that it will be that way and it will be that way. It's like your fiat does not dictate the state of the world as much as you really seem to like to believe that it does.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
no,
to bring it back to Anthropic a little bit, because I had more to talk about there, like, I do think at least some of the people with Anthropic are starting to get the idea that they actually have to do some more action in this thing.
Yeah.
They did economic symposium thing where they had like a call for research proposals on and like tax or like proposals on like governance to how it help basically. And they're going to have like a whole government symposium where they have bring all these proposals and research and try and figure out solutions and things like that. So that's cool. I did want to go back to the, well, anything we do is going to have some problems, with this other quote from Dario Amodei, which was less good, which is that they started taking Saudi Arabian money fairly recently, which they said they were never going to do. And in a memo to Anthropic employees, Dario Amodei said that taking money from Middle East leaders would likely enrich dictators, but said that, quote, no bad person should ever benefit from our success is a pretty difficult principle to run a business on. Which, like, is true, but there's things that you can do there that are not take money from Saudi Arabian dictators.
Yeah. It's like, okay, sure, no ethical consumption under late stage capitalism, but there's a wide berth there, my friend, between it's like, yeah, it's like you can't ever ensure you're not taking money from bad people to let's go to some of the worst people and take their money.
Yeah, explicitly that we said we would not do before.
Right,
So
right. Yeah, it's like you had so many other options other than the guys you said you wouldn't take money from. It's like, yeah, no, it's weirdly, because I went and saw Josh Johnson on Sunday and I'm reminded of he did a part of his show about Target and Target's like DEI
mhm,
commitment that they then backed out of. And it's like, you got yourself into this problem because if you had not promised to pay this money, and then backed out of paying the money, no one would actually be mad at you. But it's because you said you were going to do something and then later went back and said, no, wait, we're not doing that anymore. That is what has made people really mad at you.
mhm,
Surprise, surprise. If you say, I'm not going to do that, and then you go and do it, you're eroding your trust. And
yeah,
really, honestly, especially for like a company that seems to, have a sense of principle,
mhm,
congratulations, you have voided those principles. And that's going to take yeah,
yeah.
it's harder to build back
So
trust.
there definitely a lot of people questioned that decision.
Yeah.
To get back to the actual news from yesterday, like basically every other AI company that exists, Anthropic has copyright lawsuits against them.
Of course.
There was one in particular that was interesting because there was a ruling a couple months ago, and that is from a group of authors alleging that they basically used a whole database of pirated books, just like
Mm,
downloaded it from a pirate site and used that to train their model. And the ruling that happened on that a couple months ago from the judge was to say that like it wasn't copyright infringement just to train on the books necessarily, but it was definitely piracy to just have stolen these books from a piracy site.
yeah.
So he let that lawsuit go forward. And so what happened is yesterday, as they announced they settled it for an undisclosed amount of money that
Mm,
may or may not be disclosed by the time this podcast comes out. We'll see because more may come out soon.
yeah. Well, those things also, it's always a toss up as to if they get disclosed or not.
Yeah. So it's also not super clear what the motivation was here. The other thing about it is that they are no longer using that data set for training. Like
Mm,
they stopped
hmm.
using the books data set years ago, but they did use it for a couple years at the beginning.
Yeah.
So one could say that this was an acknowledgement of like, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. Or one could say that they were facing potential damages of $1 trillion and they don't have $1 trillion. And so they
Mm,
kind of had to settle it regardless.
yeah. Yeah.
So
I feel like it's still like no matter which way you slice it, I feel like it's still an unfortunate outcome just from like the legal perspective of it, because settling it means that you don't have the precedent on the books of like how they have decided the case. And so that like when these cases come forward, settling them removes their efficacy in setting the standards for future
yeah,
legal enforcement surrounding AI and things like that. So
yep,
seeing
exactly.
something like that settled is deeply upsetting because it means that, yeah, it means that you're just going to have to wait for the next case to roll around. Or hey, if you're so altruistic, I don't know, see Anthropic lobbying Congress to have them pass like valid AI restrictions, but that's maybe me being a bit optimistic.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. But
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
like
I
it
mean,
was
it's like if
definitely.
they're having a government symposium, it's like that would be a great way to implement the changes that you feel, it's like put your money where your mouth is kind of thing. But who
Yeah,
knows?
I could have a whole other discussion about this, and we should sometime. But yeah, I think the big thing about the settlement was that
Hmm.
this had been the most precedent that we've gotten on the like,
Yeah.
is it a copyright infringement to train on things without
Hmm.
permission, basically? And
There's no answer there.
the precedent that we got was actually sort of in a discouraging direction for that because the judge
Hmm.
did say like it's not just the training that's the problem, it's the piracy.
Yeah,
And so
but
unclear if that would have held for other cases in the first place, but it would
well,
have been.
and it also like, and just like in terms of legal precedent and stuff like that, that like that judge saying that and letting the case move forward, like that doesn't exhaust kind of like the appeals process, and something like that gives it the potential to eventually move forward and work its way to like the Supreme Court, where it
Yeah,
could
like it
be
definitely
established
wasn't
as a clearer precedent.
it definitely wasn't a definitive decision. It was just
Yeah.
the only decision that has actually been made on this
Right,
question so
right.
far.
Yeah, which is again, it's like why I'm kind of sad for it, because man, we had a chance for like, something to really be said and something for to really be, enshrined in legal codex and stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I'm mad about that settlement. I'm sure those authors made out really nicely, but I'm mad
I
about
hope
that
so, but
settlement.
yeah,
So,
I'm glad they got money. Like a lot of the other people who
mhm.
are suing these are probably not going to get money for a long time if they
Yeah.
do. So at least there's that. But
Yeah. Unfortunate.
yeah, I think high level, I mean, I
Mhm.
wouldn't say I can talk for Anthropic's perspective on copyright infringement, but I think the broader AI world's perspective on it is it has to be
Mhm.
fair use because otherwise none of this works. Or more
So,
like philosophically, AI is a good for the world and we can bring this data to people more in a more accessible fashion and we can make it more work better, which I do even believe to some extent is the thing.
yeah.
That's the other thing about Anthropic is that they're not doing a lot of the stuff that's just like, what if I made some AI slop Facebook posts? Like, notably, they don't even
Yeah.
have an image or a video generator. They're text only.
Mhm.
They're doing a lot more of the like mundane coding. Claude
Yeah.
is the best coding assistant, and they do really well at a lot of the sort of science and research stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it is useful to use for research sometimes. And obviously, you double check its sources, but like it does make things faster to do. So, like, I do even believe that that is true to some extent. So, like, the
Yeah.
argument is in order to get that societal good, we need to be able to have fair use of all of society's information to do it with. And in the
I
abstract, I don't even necessarily disagree with that either. It's just that, but okay, but then how do those people get paid? Because they need to
yeah.
live. Like, how are they rewarded for creating this content that we're using for the
I
broader society or whatever? We
my
need,
and my response on that is definitely to like to push on that your base assumption there of like need all of society's copyrighted works to make this thing happen. And I'm like, do you really? There's a
yes.
whole heck of a lot of public domain content out there that you could use because it's public domain and it doesn't have a copyright associated with it.
Yeah, so that's
And
another one of Karen Howe's points from Empire of AI, which I don't know how much I agree with, but is a point that people should investigate for sure, which is
yeah,
the big AI companies have taken a let's just throw everything at it. Just like get a big giant pot of data and we don't care what's in it. We don't care what the quality of it is. Just like get as much as possible and throw it into the model and make it work.
yeah,
And that perhaps a more effective technique and more ethically sound technique would be to just get high quality data in smaller amounts.
yeah.
Um, and
Where you are able to actually identify whose data it is and maybe pay them for it.
yeah, and make sure that there's not like CSAM content in it, which was a problem with the Stable
Oh
Diffusion
yeah.
data set. And like
Mhm.
people's private personal information, which was also shown to be in some of these data sets, and
Mhm.
like health information. You can imagine if it got scraped somewhere, then it just ends up in this data set. And there's some evidence of people being able to do that, make really good models on just
Mhm.
curated small data sets, but not in this general purpose way that a lot of these LLMs are yet. So
Yeah. No, yeah, like it's I don't know. Honestly, it leads me to just like questions like, hey, like maybe then like maybe just don't on the general purpose AI, because to your point, Anthropic being an AI company that is more geared towards like a corporate use case or things like that. When I think of in my most generous AI moments when I'm like, this is what AI would actually be useful for, I see it as being these very like niche use cases. And in those cases, like you do probably want to train the AI on your niche data set from your corporation. And because it's like, I think of like my brother works in a foundry casting parts for GM cars. And I'm like, I bet you could probably use AI to help you out with like your quality assurance testing and things like that, and being able to like,
mhm.
look at like stuff for process improvement. So he's got a wealth of data coming out of this foundry in Michigan that I'm sure he could feed into an AI model and like have that be something useful. Like I feel like there should be a place where that doesn't need a whole lot more like publicly accessible data outside of like what his company has available to sort of
Yeah,
feed into it.
I will counter argument that a little bit, unfortunately, which
Yeah, sure.
is that I've worked with machine learning for a long time. I did a lot of it
Yeah.
at Amazon. A lot of it just does not work very well, and that was a lot of the opinion that I had it on at Amazon. Is a lot of people would be like, "Well, we have all this data. Let's do machine learning," and like data is messy and doesn't work very well. And actually, you
Yeah.
have to go in and like manually label it, and it doesn't magically solve all your problems in the way that everyone hopes that it would a lot of the time.
Mhm.
And it's actually a lot of work, and it is good in a lot of applications, but it's hard to do
Yeah.
in specific applications. And the thing about these general LLMs that I think is the actual transformational part of it, that is not that it can
Mhm.
talk to you and have a conversation about your life or whatever. We could do that with chatbots to some degree before.
Yeah.
It's that it does have some amount of world knowledge that it can apply generally. So, for example, I
Mhm.
did work on a startup, Zuka, that was building a AI assistant for food and beverage manufacturers. Basically, it's a tool where you're doing all of the actual manufacturing planning. You're coming up with your recipe that you want to make and in industrial quantities, and then the packaging for it and the manufacturing equipment that you need to manufacture it, and calculating the economics based on all of that, and the cost of the ingredients and the packaging and the labor that you need to work the lines and like the time that it's going to take to run it all through and all of that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And we got remarkably good at that by basically just asking Claude to do it, because Claude already knows a lot of stuff about food science and
Yeah.
manufacturing, and it just
Yeah.
like had in its knowledge base a lot of like industrial manufacturing equipment specs, not only specific data that it had in its model, but conceptual knowledge that it was able to apply to some extent.
Yeah.
So that would have been probably impossible to do otherwise, basically, like,
Mhm.
or really, really hard. So
I would still argue there's probably some element yeah, like I think that having the general knowledge there I think is useful, but like I feel like you could have gotten that knowledge from either through public domain information because I don't think that specs on the different, manufacturing things are something that's like necessarily companies like to publish that. They want you to know what their
yeah,
stuff can
well,
do.
like to publish it and like you to know it and not copyright it are different things. So
Yeah, this is true. This is true. To the point is like I think that is something like if you had a more niche data set, it becomes more complicated, it becomes more difficult to build that model if you're kind of having to go out and sort of acquire the training data set to sort of like make it knowledgeable in these domains. But I would argue that like as opposed to just scraping the internet, it's like, okay, Claude, go out and get these research papers on these topics and maybe pay the people who wrote them to access those, train yourself up on it, and then let's kind of like go and do some work on there. See, I don't know, like this is me just like talking out of
yeah,
my
I mean,
butt.
I don't think there's a
I'm
good
talking
solution
out
for
of
it.
my
So
rear
like,
end completely right now.
yeah, it's like I'm like, well, I don't know how well that would work, but I don't know how well any of this is
Yeah,
working.
yeah.
So me being like, well, I don't think that's a good solution doesn't say anything particularly about your solution being worse or better than any other solution. But I
But
can
yeah.
see the like if there was a world where you could just create knowledge for society and get paid for it, and then AI
Hmm.
could use that in a way separately,
Yeah.
that could work in a way that was not copyright. But that's not how our society
Right.
works right now.
No, it really is not. Yeah, and it would have to be, I don't know. God, this is just like talking about like the universal basic income thing. It's like, well,
Yes.
okay, no, we have taken away like everybody's jobs. Now everybody is just like an information sponge for the machines. You get paid money by information. It's
Yeah,
like
I mean, and that's the
that's
other
like a
thing that
weird. Hmm.
why I've come around on this a little bit to the I don't know about if the
Hmm.
copyright way is the right way to do this, is because that does make that the incentive structure, is that the only
Yeah,
way that people are getting paid is to generate content for AI.
yeah,
And that feels bad too. So ideally, like my proposal is like some kind of tax structure where
yeah.
we have government programs that pay creators, and the AI companies pay large chunks of tax on the stuff that they're training from public
Right.
domain data. And then that gets redistributed in some sensible way to people who are making
Yeah.
content that is
Or like,
generally useful for people and not
yeah.
necessarily the content that the AI companies want to pay for, which is not the same set of things.
Right, right. I don't know. To our conversation, I think last week about like voice modeling and stuff like that, like the SAG-AFTRA union video game agreement, being able to trace like the provenance of like whose voice am I using in generating this character, whose art
Hmm.
am I using in generating this image, whose research am I using in generating this recommendation. I feel like to me at least, that's like this pivotal problem of AI that has
Yes.
not been solved, and that I feel like really needs to be solved if we want
Yeah,
to do this in a way that is ethical to the creators of the content.
that was my position and to some degree still is my position, that that
Hmm.
is definitely a key problem of attribution of training data
Yeah.
and attribution of revenue from models to creators of things that are in training data.
Hmm.
But also some part of me is just like, that's still too much capitalism. Don't we have a non-capitalism solution to this?
I mean, yeah, UBI is the non-capitalism solution, but like, if we live in a capitalist
I know.
hellscape.
And so like that's again why every day I'm just like, well, because yeah, because then the incentive still is just you're building the data for the AI, and whatever
Yeah.
makes the most money for the AI company is what you're building because that's what you're
I
getting
mean,
paid for.
it's kind of where we exist right now for content creators and stuff like that. It's like
Yeah,
you're
which is
building
also
for the
not great.
algorithm. It's not great. It's not great. Just not saying that like if we're thinking about path of least resistance for future development of society, we're kind of 2 steps in that direction already.
Yes, also yes, which also scares me. So
Yeah.
I don't want us to be in the
Hmm.
future of the content mill, the AI content mill. And I don't think most people want that either, too. And like to end this on a slightly more positive note, there's
Hmm.
another trend that the BCs love to talk about, and also you can just see when you look at people, is people want authentic content from real people. They want
Hmm. Yep.
personality. They
Yep.
want
Yep.
not highly polished stuff. And like that's
Hmm.
why people
Hmm.
make fake UGC, and that's why Twitch is really big, and that's why
Yep.
streamers
Yep.
are really big. And like all of that stuff is happening clearly, sort of like counter to the AI slop
Yeah.
parade. And
Hmm.
people are paying for that to some extent. And that
Oh yeah.
is a thing that people want, and I think will continue to want, and probably even more so.
Yeah. I will say the number of auditions I get in my inbox that say be natural, like not polished, conversational. It's absolutely a trend in like production of commercials and yeah, like content to sell you things. Like everyone really wants you to sound like you are not a machine.
Yeah, and I mean, in journalism is also a big one too. The death of the news media has a lot of causes, but one of them is just people don't want this fake objective news persona
Yeah.
that's trying to both sides everything and present it like there no person was interpreting this in any way. They
Yeah.
want news TikTokers who like have opinions on things and say them.
Hmm.
And they want podcasts where people talk about things and have like real feelings
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
them. And
I mean,
they know that
does leave me questioning how much people get their news from Josh Johnson, like, comedy skits these days.
probably a lot. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of surveys around where do you get your news, and there's a good like 40% of people who are like from TikTok. I don't know that that's not probably not the number, but it's a very high number.
It's a high
So
number, yeah.
yeah, so and like there are TikTokers who are doing real news. I was
Yeah.
also listening to one of them on a podcast where it's just like they're literally like, here's the news of the day. I'm going to read it from under my desk because that's my gimmick, but
Hmm.
um, I am just like reporting the news and then telling it to you. It's not like it's not news. And the whole thing about that was like she got an interview with NPR or an NPR
Hmm.
affiliate, and they described it as like a news fluencer and not like a reporter. And there's a
Or
lot of
not like a
disdain.
journalist.
A journalist, like there's a lot of disdain for the content creator journalist
Hmm.
side of things, even when they are doing real research and real reporting, because they're not.
Yeah, it's like I'm pretty sure that's just a reporter. You just don't
Yes,
like the format they're using.
yeah. So there's a lot of that too, and just people want to connect with people and
Yeah.
understand the people who are presenting them content, and so I
Hmm.
think that's something that is just going to continue to be universally true. So
Yeah.
even as AI continues to eat everything, even more so, that will be something that people want, and we will have to figure out how to continue having it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. What a note to end on.
Yes, and on that, rather than capitalism is broken, I don't know where we're going.
Yeah. Human connection. Yay.
Yay! All right, thank you for listening to our podcast again.
Yes.
Tune in next week for another episode of the Fast and Broken podcast, and we'll see you then.
Bye.